Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Capital Portfolio Management, a BP success story. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. By way of introduction, I'm Aaron Watson, Business Development Director here at Denver and the host of this webinar. Our two speakers today are Josh Marshall, Denver's CEO, and Paul Northcote, the head of our capital portfolio solution, Nostra. During the next 20 minutes, we are going to be looking at how we built an end-to-end digital solution for BP to better manage their capital performance and portfolio governance, as well as look at the key benefits that Nostra has delivered across their capital projects portfolio. We will also be running a live Q&A during the webinar. We have enabled our Ask a Question feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, just pop them in there and we will answer them at the end of today's presentation. We will also be sending around a link to an on-demand recording of this webinar later today. I'd now like to hand you over to our first speaker, Josh, who will give you a brief overview of who Denver are.
Thanks, Aaron, and welcome everyone, and thanks for making the time today. We really appreciate that. I just want to provide some context for today's session, and by way of just providing a brief overview of who Denver is and our partnership with BP. We're an Australian-based organisation. We're headquartered in Perth and also Brisbane, and we've been in operation for over 30 years. Denver's a really focused organisation in what we do and who we do it for. We deliver technology-led services and products, primarily into the oil and gas and mining industries globally. Our service and product areas is primarily around OT/IT, convergence, data and asset management, and capital performance, which is what we're talking about today. And a lot of that is around solving many of the challenges that are being faced in this industry: asset reliability and availability, productivity, margin improvement, operational safety, and what we're talking about today, which is around capital performance. So a lot of our background and experience is built on effectively executing digital at speed for our clients in these industries. With regards to the BP and Denver relationship, we've been in partnership with BP for 30 years. And importantly, our business was actually started from an engagement with BP at their Kwinana refinery 30 years ago. Cast forward 30 years, and we still remain a global technology delivery partner to BP. And we're actively involved in solving many of their challenges and opportunities in their downstream environments throughout Europe, US, and Australia today. Importantly, we're actually in part of their transition to a net zero organisation by 2050. We're playing a significant role where digital is really supporting them on that journey. The slide that you see just highlights a few points around our partnership, and you can notice one of those is around Nostra, which is the product that we have acquired from BP, and we'll be talking about that transformation journey today. I'll now hand over to Paul Northcote, who's head of Nostra, through the transformation journey that we've been on with BP over the last 9 years. Importantly, Paul was at the inception of this initiative 9 years ago and comes with plenty of insight when it comes to the capital space and how we use technology to improve the performance in this for their downstream environments. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As Josh said, I was working with BP at their Bulwer Island refinery in Brisbane in 2009 when this journey started. And when we started this, it was just another business problem that BP brought to us. We didn't kind of envisage that it would become what it's become today. At the time, BP recognised that they had some significant issues across their project delivery and across their portfolio delivery at Bulwer. In particular, that site was one of the poorer performing sites in the group. They brought in a new head of projects at the time, and he identified a number of problem areas, a number of challenges that they had. As you can see on the left of the screen, they had a large amount of different systems. They had a lot of siloed data. And one of the issues that they had was actually having trust in that data. A lot of time was spent by people verifying data across different disciplines. As with many organisations, they had a lot of manual processes, a lot of paper-based processes, and that would lead to error and would lead to delays. They had a real problem prioritising all of their projects across their portfolio and aligning them to the business objectives of the site and of the organisation. And things like the standardisation and change management issues that they had were leading to project disruption costs, as you can imagine. There was a real issue amongst around transparency in the business and the ability to be able to accurately predict financial performance. Forecasting was a massive issue for them. They actually probably couldn't tell you what their forecasting accuracy was because they simply couldn't measure it, but it was certainly extremely low. This added to limited stakeholder engagement, where the leadership team would be looking at numbers. They would be struggling to trust numbers. They would be struggling to understand if financial performance that they were seeing was correct. And that added to some trust issues in the business. And then overall, they had no real consistent view of quality and risk within their business. So these were the kind of challenges that they were facing. On to the next slide. So as I said, the journey started in 2009. Now, at that time, BP were looking to buy something. They were looking to buy an enterprise solution that matched the requirements. They weren't looking to build something. But what happened was that we were engaged to do the requirements gathering. We worked very closely with the engineers, and we spent a reasonable amount of time doing that. And we looked at probably up to 10 enterprise level products in the market at that time. And we ended up presenting them with 3 that we believed had some merit in meeting the requirements. Now, when we presented them, and I was in the stakeholder meeting at the time, we'd probably 15 stakeholders. Some of those products were good at some things, some were good at others. Nothing really did everything they wanted, but it wasn't a kind of, a 9 out of 10. There was more of a 6 out of 10 for most of those products. So they asked us if we consider building something, and working with the head of IT and the head of projects, that's what we did. So we designed and implemented the product initially at Bulwer Island in Brisbane. It was very, very successful. Within a year, the forecast accuracy was up in the 90+%. They were starting to understand how to manage projects better. And it was put forward for the BP Helios Awards in London, where it gained some traction around the BP networks, the professional networks. And then from there, it was implemented at 2 German refineries in the next couple of years. And one of the things we did was set up a global governance model with BP. Now, that was crucial to the success of Nostra. We had a number of BP engineers and project professionals from around the world on working group and then a steering committee, and they would provide us with guidance, provide us with ideas. They would debate those ideas, they would vote on them, and we would end up with a set of requirements that would be implemented every year. So we had in excess of 10,000 hours of their time to help in product development, which was massive. Over the next few years, it was picked up by BP globally and mandated as their tool of choice in the downstream, and is currently implemented at 6 of BP's refineries, and is also implemented in their fuels value chain as well. We obtained the IP earlier this year, and crucially, BP remain a committed partner to us. We're actually implementing at the Rotterdam refinery at the moment. As they move their downstream and upstream into what they're calling OneStream, we're now looking towards the upstream business with Nostra. And they intend to be on this journey with us for the future. And part of the reason they wanted us to bring it to market was they're now looking to extend the success of that governance to bring people in from other businesses who can bring ideas and make the product better. On to the next slide. So as at the end of any implementation, we look to see if we manage to do what we said we would do, essentially benefits realization. And these were the key metrics that we measured it on. Had we delivered a single source of truth? Yes, we had. We'd integrated the system with a number of systems at BP, Maximo, Primavera, P6, SAP, from Microsoft Project, etc. And whilst remaining system agnostic, because BP has different source systems at different sites. So we ticked that box, and that was really important. We digitized the product delivery or the project delivery processes. BP spent a lot of time, years of investment in getting their processes right to deliver capital projects. This system was able to align to those processes and to help other sites align to those processes. That said, it is highly configurable, so it can be configured to suit other businesses. We improved capital governance and gating, significant. We'll talk about some benefits there in a minute, but we improved the speed at which projects get through gates, at which they're governed, and the transparency within that. And as I mentioned, the single source of truth is related to the integration side. So being able to look at one system for project managers, for example, they don't have to go and look at SAP. They don't have to go and look at something like Maximo. It's all there in one place for them. So that was absolutely crucial. On to the next slide. So what does it mean for Nostra today? Well, we've taken the kind of myriad of systems which they have there, databases, spreadsheets. As some of you know, some of these spreadsheets are incredibly complex. Key systems, the ERP systems, the scheduling systems, forecasting, all of that stuff. We've integrated that into Nostra seamlessly. That's given us that single source of truth that we were seeking. The digital capturization of the ideas and the ability to prioritize these ideas now against their business objectives is very easy for them to do that. Nostra provides a kind of cradle to grave approach. So we take project ideas all the way through projects, all the way through into portfolio, and even to portfolio of portfolio level. So you can prioritize all of your ideas and your projects very easily. The integrated forecasting feature is very important. You can either bring your forecasting in from a source system, if that's the way you do it, or you can use the forecasting module within Nostra to do it. And again, that's very important because some of the sites on the BP journey, we would find a site that, for example, was extremely highly skilled in P6, and therefore wanted to use P6 and integrate that to Nostra. We would find some sites which were fairly basic in the knowledge of P6, and they would use some of the modules within Nostra to do some of that work. Overall portfolio view and dashboarding. Again, we want to be agnostic of software, so we provide some of the dashboarding and some of the reporting within Nostra. However, we provide easy integration to business objects, Power BI, Tableau, whatever a client might use. And again, with BP, that has changed over the years, and they've made a more uniform decision, now to go with Power BI, but it has changed. Next slide. So just looking at some of the benefits that we found with Nostra, and these are benefits that BP have legally allowing us to talk about, but in reality the benefits across some of their sites are better than this. But a 5% reduction in capital project costs, significant. BP has got billions of dollars currently managed under Nostra. So the benefit there is significant. We've seen a 10% reduction in budgeting variability, again, significant. Forecasting accuracy, I mentioned earlier, across BP's portfolio now, we've seen up to 98% forecasting accuracy. That really is helping them with their underspend, with their overspend, with their ability to redirect capital spend to the right places, identify it early, and use their money well. Return on investment, we've seen 6 to 12 months generally, a couple of sites a bit quicker than that. We had one site which had project managers who were saving 2 days per month per project manager once Nostra was implemented. So that's 24 days per project manager at a site. So you can imagine the significant savings on that site. And that is back to you, Aaron.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Thanks for that insight into the history of Nostra and how it's transformed BP's approach to capital projects. The benefits you've outlined certainly seem to have raised a few interesting questions from today's attendees. I know that there's a few in the open questions, and there's also a couple of questions that were emailed through ahead of time. One that's been asked by Jen just here, if you could elaborate, Paul, is whether or not the platform is SaaS or on-prem.
Yeah, look, it's a SaaS platform, but it's come from an on-prem background. So we still have some on-prem implementations at BP, and it's being transitioned to SaaS. In the future, SaaS is the preference, but we can still do on-prem as well.
Great. And a further question that Janet also asked there was if you could elaborate a little bit on what the actual implementation time looks like for a typical deployment.
Yeah, look, we found the implementation time has typically been between 4 and 6 months. We've seen that coming down over the last few implementations, and there's also a factor there around the speed at which the business can actually implement, the speed at which they can have their people organised as well. So there's a few factors there.
Okay, great. There was 2 more questions that I'd also had come in here that were from a gentleman by the name of Damien Cooling. The first question he had was for yourself, Paul, and that was, what do you see as Nostra's key differentiators to other systems that are available in market?
Look, I think there's a few. I'll touch on some of them. The fact it's been built by project professionals, I think it immediately resonates with project professionals when we put it in front of them. The flow of the system, the functionality of the system, that immediately resonates. You can tell it's been designed by those type of people. I think the cradle to grave side of it with the integration is really, really important. And I think probably the cost and licensing aspect side of it, which we might get Josh to talk about a bit later.
Excellent. I also just saw Rajiv has just also asked a question here, Paul, which I guess we've probably got time for these 2 questions. And it was, in what areas would you typically see the 5% cost savings realised with Nostra?
Look, so I think there's a few areas that we've seen that happen. I think the digitisation of the project process has made a big difference. So a lot of sites, all sites actually had manual paper processes. This would lead to projects getting lost, approvals getting lost. People wouldn't know where things were. And we saw somewhere in the region of 60 to 70% improvement through stage gates. Now that's a significant saving. That could be weeks of saving. I think also the ability to view all your projects from a portfolio level, so the portfolio managers can get a much better view on what's happening. They can move labour to the right projects. They can see what's coming up. They can move equipment, etc., scaffolding, that type of stuff. So there's a number of areas that we've seen those savings appear.
Very interesting. And Josh, just one last question, mindful of time, and that was from Damien as well. And it was just if you could explain or run through what the actual commercial licensing model looks like for Nostra.
Yep. So on that front, I won't go into pricing specifically, but at this point, we're looking at a more site-based licensing based on the way that capital is funded, typically in the industries that we work in. We're looking at, and it's what we've got in play at BP, and we want to provide that consistency into market, is we're using an unlimited user license per site because we want engineers on the ground through bringing ideas and project ideas into Nostra and not just kind of the power users as well. So we're trying to, I guess, in that way, disrupt the software market a little bit in terms of making the user licensing approach as easy as possible. And so that's the direction that we're taking on that front. And then there's obviously a lot of flexibility that we have, particularly around how people are looking to acquire software, whether it be OPEX and CAPEX modelling at the moment. So there's flexibility around that as well. So that's at a high level, Aaron.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Well, it looks like we've covered all of our questions there. Paul, was there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, I think just looking at this quote that's on the screen at the moment, is an interesting backstory. So Dave Dalamoli, who was the solutions program manager, he came to Bulwer in 2012, and he'd been charged with finding an end-to-end digital solution in this space. He genuinely believed he was going to have to go off the shelf and to an enterprise solution, but he actually had heard about Nostra through the networks. And of course, the story is that he ended up choosing Nostra against those other products back then, and that's when it then became the mandated tool across the downstream business.
Fantastic. I guess mindful of time there, everybody. We are going to keep the session active just for a few minutes longer should there be any further questions that anyone on the actual webinar would like to ask. For everybody else, we appreciate you being here and hope that you got some valuable insights from this event. An email will be sent out to all attendees in a few hours' time, and it'll contain a link to an access of the recording of this webinar. If anyone is interested in learning more about Nostra, please feel free to reach out through the contact information that will be provided in the email we're sending out. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.